Now, our former governor, candidate for the Republican nomination for President of the United States, Buddy Roemer.
Thank you. Welcome to Louisiana, those of you who are visiting. When our nation began, it was separated by thousands of miles of the Atlantic Ocean from the shores of the King. In many ways, because of the distance and the benevolence of the monarch, constituent backgrounds of the colonists, and these colonies were already the freest place on earth. But the fear grew that the monarch would turn increasingly heavy-handed, and that taxation without representation would become the rule. The tyranny of the king would rule the land. So we decided to claim our self-governing freedom. It wasn't one act by either side that did it, but it happened over time. We are maybe the only nation that revolted not to gain freedom, but to maintain it. That's how deep it runs in America. Unlike the French or the Russians, we were already free. But we wanted the tyranny to know that it was a gift of God, not of the king. As Gordon Wood points out in a recent wonderful book, it was the idea of America that drove the revolution. The idea that we had unalienable rights such as freedom and would not depend on the benevolence of a king or a tyrant or a dictator or an army to maintain those rights. We knew that dependence on the benevolence of a central authority will lead ultimately to tyranny. Tyranny, actions to benefit the few, not the many. The idea of America is that we are at risk of tyranny even when we're free. And it was this idea that caused the revolution. The idea built a nation in revolt, not an event, an idea. Today, 200 years later, we are run by the tyranny of the special interests and their checkbooks. Lobbyist money, PAC money, bundle money, corporate money, association money, special interest money. Think about it. Think about the idea of it. I refer you to a tax code that is unreadable, with loopholes for the rich and famous, with favors for corporations that send our best jobs overseas, and where GE can make a profit last year of $14.2 billion worldwide and pay not one penny of federal income taxes. And you know what? They gave $4.3 million in political contributions to candidates for president 4 years ago. Corporations never made more profit than they did this year. How do you feel? After this nation was brought to its knees in the last recession by the Wall Street banks and other companies which received trillions of dollars in taxpayer bailout and credit enhancement money without a single thank you in return. Did you get your thank you? I refer you to a bank reform bill that allows too big to fail to remain, that didn't address the capital ratio increasing with the size of the bank, that didn't restore the provisions of Glass-Steagall, and that acted like Wall Street banks are making America great again, the great robbery. I wonder how this happened. At the age of 67, a guy that's built $1 billion in banks that didn't take one penny of bailout money. I wonder how it happened. Could it be that the financial sector of Wall Street were the largest political check writers in the nation last cycle? Could it be that Goldman Sachs was the single largest financial contributor at $3.4 million, and that no one went to jail for fraud, for lying, or for the big scam? Could it be? I won't talk about the money given by the insurance companies, or the tort lawyers, or the pharmaceutical companies. Now, there are some giants that gave us a health care reform bill that did nothing to lower the cost of government care. They didn't cap tort claims. They didn't require insurance companies to compete across state lines. They didn't open pharmaceutical companies up for competition or to lower their price for volume or competition from Canada. These were the monopoly protectors in the bill. I don't have to remind you of the subsidies and special favors in a federal operating budget that's so out of balance that the national debt will double from its current historic high in the next 8 years, and so full of gimmicks and mystical and rosy assumptions that I believe that that even horrible picture is understated. Okay, so our political leadership, Democrat and Republican, decide to subsidize ethanol, oil at $100 about a barrel, gas, unproven energy technology, housing, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and on and on and on. Follow the money. D.C. is rigged. They don't read the bills. They don't have time to. They're raising money. They're working out lobbyist jobs upon retirement from the very companies buying favors before their committee. This is institutional corruption. It is tyranny. Let me tell you something you didn't know, because you knew all that. Let me tell you something you didn't know. In the last political cycle for president, more money was contributed from the Washington, D.C. area than from 32 states combined. The working poor and the middle class Americans don't give. 99% of the citizens don't give. Political giving has mushroomed into a casino for favors for the special interests who live off government. The party is thrown by those who need government contracts, or hidden favors, or secret conferences, or caucus deals. 1% of the people give the money, and they want a favor, an access, a help, a relief. I'm the only person running for president who's been both a congressman and a governor. Wow. I've seen the rigged money game grow and grow and grow. And although I specialize in beating incumbent Democrats for Congress and for governor on the issue of corruption and special interests, I've never seen anything like the tyranny that walks our land, the tyranny of the special interest alive in America today. We didn't get here by accident. The president refuses to lead because he's busy running to Wall Street for a fundraiser at $35,000 a ticket. or running to Houston for the big oil money. The man of change you can count on is raising $1 billion from the special interest. Now that is change. It used to only be $250 million. You thought it was the poor who wrote the tax code? You thought it was the middle class that busted the budget? You thought it was the working people who sent our jobs overseas while we taxpayers paid for it? America's in trouble. And we can do better, folks. We must be bold. We owe more money than any nation on earth ever has. Who cares, you ask? It's just a debt. Abraham Lincoln, the greatest Republican, said it. I'm going to quote him. Excessive debt shrinks a nation. You feel like being shrunk. President Jefferson buys the Louisiana Purchase for pennies an acre from a Napoleon who was broke and needed to finance another war. Excessive debt shrinks a nation. America doubled and France disappeared from the New World. Wow. America's in trouble. We can do better. We must be bold. We spend without discipline, and in the last 2 years without a budget. To hit the sweet spot for growth and begin to get the debt in control, we must discipline spending and totally reform the tax code. That's the easy part. We spend $300 billion a month and we borrow $120 billion of it from our competitors. Nice move, America. We must reduce spending to get spending down to 18.5% of GDP and enhance job growth. We can do it by reducing spending $140 billion a year for 5 years. That's 1% a year of the GDP. I've identified 6 broad areas of reduction targets, from $50 billion to $150 billion. Everything's on the table. Entitlements are a special concern because of their tremendous growth rate over the past 20 years and the fact that they comprise such a huge part of the debt. Medicare alone is 26% of the budget. Entitlements won't be destroyed or eliminated, but certain actions are required to preserve their financial integrity. On Social Security, I would change the retirement age gradually over time, 1 month a year for 24 years. I would bring the new retirement in line with the ages of us and wouldn't raise any taxes or lower any benefits for Social Security. 1 month a year for 24 years. On Medicare, we need to lower the growth rate about 1.5% a year to maintain solvency. It can still grow and protect seniors, but the rate of growth will reduce over time. I would begin with a systematic reform of insurance, pharmaceuticals, and tort lawyers, yielding competition across state lines, caps, and discounts. This doesn't just help Medicare. It helps every American, young and old. I would allow tax-free medical savings accounts for younger workers. I would offer a 25% incentive to providers who institute procedures which save money for patients and the system. Incentivize them. Innovation will explode. The healthcare system will be changed. I would target other agencies other parts of government. With management, I would downsize, downsize, downsize. You could take transportation. The projects are local and state. I would eliminate the Department of Energy. I would put education. I would put education where it works best, back home with the parents and the grandparents. The housing subsidies are gone. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac will be buried by me personally. To the embarrassment of Clinton, Bush, Obama, and most congressmen in between. With the appointment of a handful of dedicated Americans, we will turn around this bankrupt institution of government, downsizing and managing it to health. That's what I do. As part of that, we will consolidate IT. We will standardize software. We'll replace half of all the federal workers who will retire in the next 10 years. That's 42%, by the way. And replace them with technology, providing better service, lower payroll costs, and a sustainable budget. Do you know, I was shocked when I read the budget. It's been 20 years. I've been in the real world building jobs, 20 years, without reading the federal budget. I've read it. Do you know that we have 18 different food assistance programs? We have 20 different homelessness programs. We have 80 different programs in USDA, DOT, Education, Interior, HHS, HUD, Department of Labor, and VA, Veterans Administration, to transport disadvantaged citizens to needed services. Management, management, management. Get used to the number one when it comes to service. Not 18, not 20, not 80. It's what I do as a CEO. Tax reform is another fundamental step in the turnaround. I'll keep it simple. The code should be simple. The current code is written by the lobbyist. It's a disgrace by any score. It's not promoting growth. It's unreadable, and deliberately so. We need simplicity, small business emphasis, broad-based fairness, lowest marginal rates, possible with the fewest exemptions and carve-outs. I like the concept of a fair tax. However, are you prepared to pay 23 to 32% rate that it calls for? I'd rather start with a 6% top rate on the first $125,000 of joint taxable income, with a top rate at $575,000 of 26%. This favors small business. I would settle corporate rates between 14 and 18, depending on how many loopholes and carve-outs we can get rid of. We'll lay the platform for growth. We'll combine it with budget discipline. We'll go for simplicity, clarity, fairness, flatter rates but progressive, the lowest marginal rates possible to make us a haven for capital. We'll zero the tax on dividends and capital gains. We'll zero estate taxes. We'll zero estate taxes up to $10 million and index that dollar amount so that it will go up over time. We'll eliminate the alternative minimum tax and the marriage penalty. But let me give you some news. It's not enough. I love all these candidates talk about scrubbing the budget. Most of them's never done it. But it's not enough. It needs to be done. But it's not enough. Our actions must be bolder. But because we are a nation producing no new jobs. It's not enough. We've lost 1.1 million jobs in the last 12 years. Our unemployment rate, combined with our not looking rate, is 11.5%. When you add the 15.6 who are working part-time or took a job at 40% less pay, 1 out of 4 American families, folks, are hurting today. They're hurting. And those that have a job are scared of losing it. Not only is unemployment killing America, the pay for the jobs we do have is not keeping pace with life's needs, is it? We've lost hundreds of thousands of jobs, and what's left don't pay anything. We've traded the manufacturing jobs of America for the service jobs. McDonald's, insurance, call support teams, Walmart. These are decent jobs, but they're hard to build a family with them, aren't they? They're hard to build a community. They're hard to build a church. They're impossible to build a nation. We used to be a nation that made things, built things, manufactured things. Made in America. You remember it? It used to mean something. You could drive across America and come do it with me next week. I've done it for the last 6 weeks. Drive across America in town after town, in Alabama and Georgia and South Carolina and New Hampshire and Iowa and South Dakota and Louisiana, and there was a town with a ball bearing factory. It's gone. Or a furniture plant. It's gone. Or a clothing manufacturer. They're gone. Or an auto parts plant. It's moved away. We only have 8% of our workforce in manufacturing. The rest of us are in service and sales. Or work for the government. Made in America. Looking back, I believe we gave many of these jobs away. Maybe I'm guilty. I was in Congress 8 years. Looking back, I think we were hurt by technology. That has an effect. Productivity has an effect. I think we were hurt by bad management. I think we were hurt by heavy-handed and short-sighted union actions. But the big chunk of our best jobs we gave away to China, to Mexico, to Japan, to India, to Korea. We sell them grain and our best jobs, and they sell us everything else. As Stephen Moore wrote in the Wall Street Journal a few weeks ago, we used to be a nation of makers. We now are a nation of takers. More Americans work for government today than for manufacturing, mining, utilities, farming, fishing, forestry, construction combined. Made in America? Not anymore. We must take bold action, and I'm going to list 4. Scrubbing the budget is good. Revising the tax code is necessary. But it's not enough for a nation at risk. Number 1, I'm a Ronald Reagan tax cut guy. I was in Congress voting with him as a conservative Democrat from 1981 to 1988 when I became governor of Louisiana. And you see those same principles in my low marginal rate proposal. However, we need to do more. Number 1, do you know what the new taxes are? Regulations. The Democrats can't pass a tax, so they pass regulations. Did you know that we had 81,405 pages of regulatory comments printed in 2010 alone? 81,000. Do you know there are 4,000 new regulations in the pipeline at present? Do you know that some 66 new major regulations implemented in 2010, only 16 had a cost-benefit analysis? Large business doesn't care. They have tax lawyers. They have compliance officers. They have lobbyists. What about small business people? These are the men and women that create the new jobs in America. 2 out of 3. Do they have this kind of, let's deal with the regulations? Do you know that small business paid more for regulations last year than they did in taxes? Ronald Reagan would stand here to tell you, regulations are the new taxes. I would go back to January 1, 2008, and every regulation imposed since then would be rescinded. Go to work, America, and it will be small business that leads us back. We will deregulate them. First day. Number 2, we'll break our addiction to foreign oil. What a disgrace. We'll be energy independent by the end of the decade. We'll utilize all form of domestic production. We'll eliminate the $500 billion annual trade imbalance. We'll create 1 million new energy jobs for Americans spending money in America that's now being spent in Saudi Arabia. The government will not pick winners and losers. It cannot. The marketplace will decide the mix, the price, and the content. To facilitate this commitment, the federal government will open all of its land, onshore and off, to drilling in a safe and technologically advanced manner. We will provide, promote, and protect energy drilling in an environmentally sound manner, but drill we will. Further, after renewed drilling has begun, we'll begin to tariff imported oil to diminish its usage. The tariff will rise as we approach the end of the decade. Tariff revenue will not be used for government operations, but will reduce the principal on the national debt. Our foreign energy tariff will be imposed on all nations but Mexico and Canada. Regulations for drilling permits will allow for expedited clearance depending on the topography to be drilled. We will have regulations that will allow for the expansion of domestic refining capacity. And when necessary, regulations will be cooperatively constructed and enforced by state agencies. The Department of Energy will be disbanded and defunded. That only saves $25 billion the first year. Any useful, valued, or necessary function of the department will be reassigned to other existing federal agencies. All energy subsidies will be eliminated, including ethanol, oil, natural gas, and unproven energy technology. The savings will exceed $100 billion annually. We will open the nuclear waste facility at Yucca Mountain in Nevada. The safe generation of nuclear energy will assist our independence and should remain at about 20% of our domestic use. Our foreign policy will take oil interest off the table. We'll have no other Marines or Army personnel serving on oil duty. And since we're no longer spending $500 billion a year in the Middle East on oil, the money that slips out from the sheiks to the terrorists will stop. The strengthening of our dollar through the elimination of a huge trade deficit created by the massive purchasing of foreign oil will reduce the price of oil over time because it strengthens the dollar, helping all user nations while compromising the power and the influence of OPEC. The Chavez regime in Venezuela will not be happy with this policy. We will. We will additionally erect a no-trade policy for all foreign products attempted to be imported into the United States containing a single drop of Iranian oil in their production or transportation. This policy is aimed at Iran until they agree to discontinue their buildup of nuclear weapons capability. Nuclear non-proliferation is our policy, and we are prepared to use the economic power and might of America and its allies in a focused way to get this done. Finally, the jobs benefits of energy independence are incalculable. 1 million in the direct industry and millions in manufacturing who need a domestic supply of affordable energy. This is what Made in America is how you build it. This is what comes when this is your policy. This is what happens when it's your focus. People go back to work again. Number 3, our third bold move will be to discontinue our nation's neglect of the issues surrounding fair trade and the loss of America's best jobs. We cannot protect American jobs from technology. We should embrace technology. But we have to take advantage of who we are. We can protect American jobs from free trade that isn't free. We will protect these jobs from unfair trading practices, from hidden non-tariff barriers erected in other nations. On trade, I will be about free and fair. Free alone has not worked for America. We'll start with fair. I'm Abraham Lincoln on this point, a short version, who believed that fair trade was what would turn America from a farmer into a builder. It's time that we look at it again. It's time that we will not quietly stand by and let our best and brightest be dusted off by unfair trade practices or the abusive labor practices of others. We will no longer play the fool. We'll practice free trade where it works, but we will practice fair trade in every relationship. Finally, I'm a banking CEO that's traveled the world, India to Argentina, Brazil to Lebanon. I know when we're being taken advantage of. And I know that our own corporate giants have never been more profitable than they are right now because they keep sending these high-priced American jobs overseas. I promise that we'll change the tax code and the spending policies and stop using your taxpayer money to defend the practice of and enable the procedures of sending American jobs overseas. Fair trade. Fair trade. Fair trade will be as valued as free. Fourth and final action. I will run successfully for president accepting a $100 maximum contribution. Like I always do. No PAC money, full disclosure. I will attempt to beat the tyranny of the big check. If we don't do this, the changes necessary to rebuild America will never happen, because Washington is bought and sold. The status quo will win. They'll fight me every step of the way. Watch them. The politically elite, the politically entrenched, never had it so good. America's hurting, and D.C. is a boomtown. Wall Street is near an all-time high. Unemployment's at 9.5 or 9.1. The Wall Street banks are as greedy as ever. No one's going to jail. Obama is raising $1 billion for re-election at $35,000 a ticket. Obama didn't cause this recession. He's just made it permanent. I want plain people. I want working people. I want small business people. I want the guys who are getting foreclosed and downsized and laid off. It's not my ideas that make me right to be president. There are many good ideas out there, and our job is to take them all in. It's my freedom to do what needs to be done. That's what's right. That's what's bold, to consider all the good ideas without being obligated to a PAC or a special interest or to business as usual. That's how I've always run, and that's how I've always beat the incumbent Democrat. Always. Get on my website, www.buddyroemer.com. I've raised contributions from 45 states. Nobody else has. With Louisiana, Texas, California, Florida, and Georgia being my top 5. I average $90.34 a donation. I've paid all my bills, and I have money in the bank. My specialty is beating incumbent Democrats who are institutionally corrupt, which I did for the United States Congress and which I did for Governor of Louisiana. I did it with no PAC money, hard limits on giving, and all the experts were united. Roemer cannot win, they said. All I need is 1 out of 100. Now think about it with me. I need 1 American out of 100 to give me $100. That's 3 million Americans. That's 300 million in the primaries. That's more money than, dare I mention, Mitt Romney or John McCain had spent 4 years ago, total. I need 1 out of 100. 1 out of 100. And then against Obama, I need 2 out of 100. I'll challenge him to 5 debates, from foreign policy to jobs, from illegal immigration to scrubbing the budget. And we'll decide at $100 a person who owns America, the billion-dollar special interests or plain and good people. The last... trying to get me off. The last poll had me known by 3% of the people, and I had 2% of the vote. I wouldn't trade places with anybody. The leader had 100% name recognition and 17% of the vote. Who would you rather be? In the age of the internet, in the age of a nation in trouble, I ask you to stand with me. We can take this country back. Thanks, everybody.